morning. You guys here? All right, we're on then. We are on. How's everybody? Good? So it's my turn. And I have to get used to this thing, so we'll see how this works. Those that know me a little well know that I'm not sure I'm going to sit on this because my legs will go to sleep in about 10 minutes. So I don't know, but so I think I'm going to stand. And what I'm going to talk about today is mothers and daughters. And I've got sort of an interesting story. I think it's interesting. I think you should have your Kleenex by. That's just a warning, you know. But I think that when I went to the conference, I know Robin brought this up yesterday, but when we went, you know, I really went with the same thought. I'm going to learn, and then I want to come back and I want to tell everybody, you know, and I want to teach. I want to spread that and realize that my husband was right, which is not the things I like to admit. Okay, and most of you know my husband. He runs the men's ministry here. So when they went to the Wild at Heart piece, he said to me, "Marie, you've got to go. You've got to. You have this wound." I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." He was right. So, what are your memories of your mother? Some of you are sitting with her. Some of you have her here. Some of you don't have her around anymore. Some of you live far from her. I think there's a lot of thoughts that go through my head about my mom, and I'm going to share a lot of that today. I'm going to share my story. And I think that there will be a lot of pieces that you probably will either relate to or think, wow, I had no idea that that was part of your story. But what I hope that we see in the end is the connection between mothers and daughters, or your mothering instinct, which is what we have as women, and how that affects so many people. And then our ability to change a dynamic to move it forward, which is my goal with my daughter. So we may not all be mothers, but we all had one. Some have longed for one. The relationship between a mother and a child is a holy, tender, fierce thing. It's fraught with landmines and umbilical cords. And they stretch and sometimes strangle. I love that. I think that's just so true. That was actually out of the book when we were looking at the journal. But and I've got some pictures throughout my my talk today. I think the next one you're going to see is my mom and my aunt. My aunt, that's my mom there on the left. And my aunt, who, my mother and her mother were not close. I think I saw her once or twice in my life. So you're going to start seeing a pattern, right, as I talk about this. But my aunt, who was her aunt, actually, she was my great aunt, she was my rock. Now, she never bore any children, but she was like my mother. So I think you've probably heard it said that you cannot pass on what you do not possess. It means that a woman with very low self-esteem will be unable to pass on very high self-esteem to her daughter, even though she may want to very much. We receive from our mothers some of the same issues that they struggle deeply with, even though they may play out differently in our lives. And a lot of people that I've talked to about this topic say that. You know, they now realize that their mother may have gone through difficulty. It changes as you change in your life. But as I tell the story, I think you'll see the things that I can see from my mother that have come out in a different way in my journey. So unintentionally, our brokenness gets passed down. I'm not sure we realize that a lot of times. It's sort of some of the same discussion around, you know, am I fighting? Is there something right here that's telling me these things? And I just go along thinking it's me. No, someone is at me, right? So this is one of the greatest motivators for a woman, to seek her healing from God. That's how I'm looking at it. And that's sort of what we want to talk about today. So she can give that to her children for the best foundation. So I sort of call it changing the destiny of sort of the patterns that I've seen in our family, but I think that you have an opportunity as you go through your healing to make that change for your whole family, especially your daughters. So I think we got a couple of other pictures. This will crack you up. So here's a couple of young pictures. I know everyone knows I'm 100, right? So the bottom picture, so, just to give you sort of a take on my situation, I think I've struggled with my weight my entire life. I mean, you will see pictures in here where you won't even recognize who I am. That picture, that was my senior prom, and I starved myself for 3 months to get in that dress. Popcorn and Fresca, I think, for 3 months, so I could get in that thing, because that was important. I figured that out now, but didn't know that then. So, yeah. Here's a real good one. I wanted to show this. So, I was married before, so you hear that in the testimony. So, my ex-husband, Sean, that was our 10-year anniversary. So we got married in 1990. So in the year 2000, we had our marriage blessed in the Catholic Church. So, Robin, here we go. I was Catholic. And so that was me. That was me probably at my heaviest weight. I was about 340 there. So let's go to the next picture. The next one is a picture right before I started my, latest, I don't know what you want to call it, healthy eating, or some call it crazy, but, when I go through the testimony, you'll hear this, but, my main goal was, I think I realized one day, people would say to me, Caitlin looks just like you. I mean, she's mini me, and I thought, wow, that's so nice. And I don't know, one day I just figured out she's copying everything I'm doing. So if I'm doing the wrong thing, she's going to copy that. And so that's sort of that clicked me over, and that's been the motivator since. So that was the start of when I began, and I think we put a picture up that was a recent in the last couple months. Sort of a change. Thank you. Still in progress, right? Thank you. So I think that one of the things that I've learned through this journey, especially around the mother wound, is that all that self-esteem comes from your mom. And whether you know it or not, from one side you're thinking about you and your mom, but then on the other side you're thinking of what you do with your daughters. So it's sort of a responsibility or this way and a responsibility this way. So, we talk a lot about, do you see me, do you delight in me, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Girls' hearts flourish in homes where they're seen and invited to become even more themselves. Mothers in particular have the opportunity to offer encouragement to their daughters by inviting that feminine world and by treasuring their daughter's unique beauty. It's so important. What is your relationship with your mom these days? I think as we start talking, think about that. What is it that, and I do have more questions at the end, so I'll warn you ahead of time. Would you say you're close? And we'll talk through some more of that in your quiet time, because that'll be some questions that you'll be thinking about when we go through quiet time in a little bit. So I think we're going to watch a clip right now. And I think a lot of you guys will appreciate this one.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap.
Mom, someday I'm going to go to the moon.
Oh, I'm afraid you're too late, son. NASA isn't sending the monkeys anymore.
Look, Mom, I drew a picture of me landing on the moon. Look, Mom, I made a prototype of the rocket out of macaroni. Look, Mom, I made a real rocket based on the macaroni prototype.
Hello, Mom. Sorry, I meant to call, but...
I just wanted to congratulate you on stealing the pyramid. That was you, wasn't it? Or was it a villain who's actually successful?
Just so you know, Mom, I am about to do something that's very, very big, very important. When you hear about it, you're going to be very proud.
Good luck with that. Okay, I'm out of here.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay, there it is. Usually without the mic, people are okay with me, but okay. All right. So the reason I played that part, it's funny, when we talk about that movie and when we were preparing as a team, I started talking about that, and that was a significant clip for me. Now, not everyone would think that's significant. They'd go, that was interesting. It was significant for me. That was how my mom was. Now, I'm going to tell this joke, and they're going to laugh at me, but originally, how many people actually saw the movie Mommy Dearest? Okay, so my first thought was that horrid, no wire hangers scene, and they were like, oh my God, what, are you kidding? And I thought, well, so we watched it, and couldn't watch it through, it's awful. But, that's sort of the things that I remember. So my mom I don't think she ever figured out how to be a mom, how to nurture. I don't think it was in there because from her mom, she didn't get it. I figured it out, through this. So let me tell you a little bit about my visit last year when I went there. I think that's where the light sort of came on for me. When we went to visit, now, I've lived away from my mom for a while, so we took Caitlin and Chuck and I, we went last year. She lives in New York. Her and my dad's still living. So my dad turned 80 this year. And my mom's 67. Yeah, because I'm 47, so there we go, yeah. So I spilled it all out, so everybody knows I was 100 when I had Caitlin. I'll get to that in the story. Okay. So, we've tried to go back quite a bit. I'm very close with my dad. We've had a lot of challenges in our family. So we were there, and, I had been through some significant weight loss by that point. So, I guess I was expecting something, a wow, or, boy, that's great. Nothing. So as I watched the clip, it resonates with me. So I'm not sure if that's something that others have felt. And I think in my life I have struggled to get that validation from my mother. So when we went last year, I didn't get it. And I thought, I guess I figured out, who cares, I don't need it from her. I have it from God. I've got it. Jesus has got this. My group was very helpful there. Very. So I think when I got there, I was so excited to share what I was doing, I'm tracking my food, I'm doing, and she just thought it was ridiculous. I couldn't figure it out. And then I thought, well, who cares? Because Kaylin thinks it's awesome, and my husband thinks it's great, and I'm doing it for the right reason, and who cares? And I think at some point you get to that in your life and you say, I'm doing this for the right reason, and it doesn't matter. So I think that's some of those largest wounds, when you still wait to hear things like, I'm proud of you. I've never heard I love you from my mother. I have never heard I'm proud of you. I think growing up in a household where, my father was born and raised in Italy, so I'm a first generation Italian. I could figure that out probably. And so our household, we were sort of like that Big Fat Greek Wedding story, but Italian. So, we were the ones with the salami sandwich, and everybody thought we were weird, and, all that kind of stuff. But my mother and I never got along. There was always this challenge, and as you know, I'm not a shy person, so I think I spoke my mind. I think I get that from my dad. But, something else resonated with me yesterday based on what Jenny Lee said, and I noticed my dad turned passive, and the world started to go by, and I think that's where he is now. So, it's one or the other, and I really related to that. So, anyway, long story short, I think that when I graduated from college, I met my ex-husband, and my mother and I were not getting along at all. So let me put this in perspective. Was not allowed to date. Okay, so now I get back from college. I'm 21. I started to work, and I was working like a later shift, like 3 to 11 or whatever. And I met Sean. He worked at the hotel I was working at. And so we'd go out after work, so that would be late, My parents they were so upset with me. I was going crazy, apparently, because I was going out. And we just really struggled. So at some point, my mom and I, I think what I figured out is it was always a fight about attention. So my mom did not want me to give attention to someone else, because I had all the, if I stay there, then she's getting all the attention. And, I wasn't doing that then, right? I wanted to go do something else. And, which somebody should probably remind me this in a while, right? Because it's going to happen to me too, right? So I think, I remember having this huge, big fight at Thanksgiving time because my aunt invited everyone over, and my mother got mad and said, well, what are you bringing him over here for? I said, well, because he's going to have Thanksgiving with us. And she could not understand why I was bringing someone there. Why would you bring him here? It's Thanksgiving. I couldn't understand it. So anyway, because we weren't getting along, I just sort of packed my stuff one day when everybody was at work, and I left. Took all my stuff, moved it in with Sean. He lived with his mom and his brother, and, was with him. And I think when I look back, we got married 6 months later. I think I probably wouldn't have made that choice, probably. I'm pretty sure of it, actually. Honestly, if that didn't happen, because I pushed myself into that for whatever reason. So I ended up there, and I was with him for 12 years, and we'll get to that part of the story in a little bit. But my mom and my aunt, they really started to struggle because my aunt still spoke to me. My mom didn't want anything to do with me at that point. I was awful by that point. So there was a lot of strife there, and then my aunt passed, and that was pretty devastating for me because she really was, the only fan I had, pretty much. So I moved with my ex-husband to Las Vegas. That's how I ended up there. Woohoo, Vegas. And never saw, it's weird to go from, when I say I lived in New York, I lived, upstate. It's like 8 hours to the city. So I was close to Buffalo. Woo. But I spent a lot of time sort of going back and forth, visiting and that kind of thing. But I think the distance put some in perspective because, we talked some after my aunt passed, but then when I was far enough, it sort of helped that some, I think. So we tried to be more sort of adult friends, really try to get through this. And, nobody could stand Sean, and, that's just the way it goes. But one day, trying to figure out the best way to tell this story, it's just interesting. So I'm working, and someone at work comes to me and says, I think I saw your husband, having lunch with, how this goes. You know where I'm going. Having lunch with some chick, blah, 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 blah. I said, no, he's working. I don't know what you're talking about. Well, he was having an affair. So he took off. We divorced. And then what was fascinating, it's my word, was that my mom was upset about the divorce. And I thought, well, you didn't like him. Now you don't like I'm divorced. You know, what do you want me to do? Right? So it was like more shame, more guilt, more shame. It just keeps going, you know. Never once, hey, I'm proud of you for not staying with that dope, or whatever the answer is, right? So here I am, Las Vegas, alone. 2 weeks later, lost my job, really by myself. But I figured it out, and I think that I learned a lot about myself at that time. I started to go back to the Catholic Church, so I'll say that on purpose. So I started to do that a little bit, and then wasn't feeling very good about myself, as you can imagine, right? So it was the whole, what were we saying yesterday? Well, if I wasn't as fat, he wouldn't have left, you know? If I was prettier, he wouldn't have gone anywhere. If I wasn't so focused on moving my career, although he never wanted to have children, so I'll get back to that because that's a funny story too. Never wanted to have kids, so, you know, I figured I would never have children, even though I really wanted to. So, got myself in a pretty bad situation after my divorce, so I ended up in a bad relationship, very abusive. Also, he was married, which I didn't know at first. But, you know, once you're in, you're kind of in. So then I was in. So that went for a while. Really tried to get away from this person to the point where I was so sick of the situation to try to break myself out of the situation. I couldn't figure out how to do it. And so I was still living in the house that we had there. So I just sold the house and moved and didn't tell him and moved into another spot of Vegas. It's not like here, like one side of Cabot to the other, you probably figure out where they are, you know, but Vegas it's a little bit harder, you know. So I was able to do that and sort of, so I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. And the whole thing that spurred that is, this is so funny, but my uncle sent me a book, and it was like a Dr. Laura book about like dumb things women do, you know, and there was a chapter in there. I wrote it down. Wait, I got to read it. Chapter 10, I know he's adulterous, addicted, controlling, insensitive, and violent, but other than that, he's great. And I'm like, that was the chapter. I thought, what am I doing? What is wrong with me? You know, the switch went off and on to better. So then I met my husband. Woo! What's interesting about that is, I'll tell you a couple funny things, and then we'll go to the next clip. But you know, meeting him, okay, so we obviously had both been married before and older, right? So, you know, and I mean, so when I met him, I was 40. I'm thinking, well, you know, can't really have kids or whatever. And he already had a 25-year-old. So we had Caitlin, like we got pregnant immediately when we got married, and you know, he used to tell the joke, oh, I do this every 25 years, and I always thought that was so funny, but it's like, I can't, so I don't know about, but, you know, what was amazing about meeting him, there's the picture, what was amazing about meeting him was that it was so many purposes. Not just the wedding, not just me, not just the heart, but he saved me. He really did. I love that picture. So there's when I had to put a couple of these in. I couldn't help myself, sorry. You know, I actually had one and I took it out, but it was, you know, my family's, I'm the tallest, okay, so that'll tell you something. So I had one that was like my dad, wrong way, Chuck and his son, and then my brother and my dad, and it looked like a staircase, and I should have put it in there. It was so funny, but this is another, you know, all-time favorite of mine. And this was last year when we went back. And, you know, what's interesting, too, and this picture reminds me of, my mom was always about the image and the outside. So if you look at that picture, it looks like we're having a great time. right? Caitlin looks happy. My mom looks like she actually is happy to have her granddaughter there. I can tell you right now, she's not. Okay? I can tell you that. But it looks like it there, doesn't it? It's fascinating. So this was Caitlin's first Halloween where I shoved her in that thing, and Chuck was like, "What are you doing? She's going to suffocate." I'm like, "It's Halloween." So I had to put her in there, you know. I know. I mean, I just thought it was awesome. She probably could have worn it for like 3 years. It was so big, you know. But at some point, I think I was wearing the head thing. It was, yeah, it was bad. But I think one of the greatest things said to me here by a mom was, "You're so patient with Caitlin." I started bawling. I think she thought, what is that about? I thought, because my mom wasn't, and I worked so hard not to react and scream and act like a nut or whatever the words are. And when she said that, I thought, wow. Another friend of mine said, you know, it's so nice that you spend time with her, you give her attention, you take her, get her nails done once in a while. I'm like, well, yeah, she's beautiful. She needs to know that because she's going to know that from me. She's going to know that from her daddy. She's going to know that from her mommy. Absolutely. She's recognized and she knows it. Can we put that clip on now? Okay. And then we can show the rest of it.
They're very good.
Ah, I'm so proud of you, son. You've turned out to be a great parent. Just like me. Maybe even better.
Do you get why that clip's so significant now? You know, sometimes I bring it up and people don't even know what clip I'm talking about. When I was the only one at the end of this movie bawling and bawling, you know, if I ever heard that, I don't think I would know what to do if I heard that from my mom. So I was amazed in that entire thing, you know, those comments, and then to hear her say that is just amazing. It's something that I would just absolutely love to hear. So, you know, turning to motherhood, you would think that my mom, you know, I was saying before, you would think she'd be excited about first granddaughter. I mean, we're Italian family. My dad's excited, you know, but he lives with my mom. So, it's a difficult struggle for me because I want her to be with them, but I don't want her to face that, the negative criticism, and have that in her life, because it will take her whole life to get out of that wound. I did not realize how significant that wound was until I started to really look at this and understand that it comes and it passes, and our responsibility is, one, to figure it out. Just like we said, can we start understanding it? What has happened to us, and figure it out. But then the other responsibility is passing it next differently, not in that same way. I don't want to be negative. I don't want to be critical. I want my daughter to have all the positive reinforcement and know she's loved, because I didn't. I still don't from my mom. She will not have that. I think when I think about things like the weight loss, you know, and I talked about, well, you know, I realized that figuring that out, you know, that it was about her sort of copying what I was doing. I think that that's the commitment around Caitlin and changing the pattern. So you start figuring out, well, I don't want that pattern to keep going. That's just one example, but I mean, there's many examples. You know, I told a story one time when we went to Kansas to see some family that Chuck has. You know, Caitlin dropped a glass or something, and my gosh, if we did that at my parents', if say she dropped it, who cares? It's a glass, She would have been screaming at her, And there, she dropped it, and they're like, we have other glasses. Who cares? I'm like, really? Wow, that's awesome. So those types of patterns you try to break, when you recognize that they're not the right things. Having a child is like having your heart walk outside of your body. How many of you feel that way? It's amazing, isn't it? Mothers love and they live for their children. I think that's sort of that significant bond around mother-child. And, we'll talk a little bit about, you don't necessarily have to have children in order to be a mothering or nurturing person. And I've had a lot of people in my life that either didn't have children. Like my aunt was a great example. She never had any children, but she had this nurturing instinct that was just amazing, and a lot of us had that. And I think we can do that for others, which is another responsibility we have. So I think our opportunity as moms is to work at seeing your daughters so they feel the true love of a mother. That is ultimately the responsibility. The thing that I think was missed in my growing up. If you have the opportunity to spend time with yours, then you do. So, everyone, well, most of you guys know, I struggle with this. I'm on the road. I work a lot of hours. I have a crazy schedule. Thankfully, my husband is great with Caitlin. Thankfully, thank God. But she knows how I feel, but, I struggle with this too. I can't be there for this, or but she knows. That's the difference. So I think it's the time, but it's also really being there when you're there and being present so that they know that you're seeing them and you're paying attention, right? Do you see me? Do you delight in me? It's all of that. I hear Caitlin say, watch me do this, look what I'm doing. Look, you've seen it 15 times. Like, look at that, wow, that's what it is. I want her to know that because, mine didn't want to see it, so. Women are inquest gifted to help others in their lives become more of who they truly are. So we can encourage, we can nurture, and we can mother them toward their true selves. So we can do that for everybody. We could do that for anyone that needs it. Sometimes that's another woman who does that. Think about in your life, who has mothered you? Who has spent the time with you? Just in any situation. It doesn't have to be your mom, right? It could be any friend of yours. It can be, I know I've got some friends here, moving here 3 years ago. I didn't know anybody here. We knew no one. Thankfully, coming to Renew and meeting people and spending time having a group, it's really changed the world for us. Because otherwise we wouldn't know anyone. And having people that I can turn to and say, help me, or listen to me cry about my speech a week ahead. Somebody had to listen. Somebody had to bawl with me. I didn't know how many times I was going to bawl through it. Honestly, of course I'm not done, but So, I think I have a picture or two still up there. There we go. So this is, so this was the latest. I think this was Easter. That was her fancy blue dress. That was her That was her first birthday. And then when we moved here, so she had just turned 3, and we put her in preschool, so she was very excited. The backpack looked like it was, bigger than she was, and it was tiny. So we get up there. We'll talk about this friend of mine in a minute, but I want to go back to the the funny story, or I guess I would call it ironic or weird, or how about this? God has a sense of humor. We'll use that. So I told you that my ex-husband left me and then went with another woman. So, and never wanted to have children. So you don't forget that part, okay? So, not just that, Amy, okay? So, when Chuck and I went to the class, whatever they call it, Lamaze or whatever, you're about 6 months in and they send you to the class like you're going to breathe and get through, that. So, that one. So we go to the class and we sit down, and now this, again, remember, this is not Cabot. We are in Las Vegas, okay? There's a lot of people there, okay? So we're sitting at the table. It's like tables like this, and in walks Sean and his wife. Seriously, who saw that coming? So they sit down next to, well, first they hug me. I know! That's what he was saying. So he assumes that he doesn't know who they are. He thinks it's somebody I know from work. And he's like, who's this? And I'm like, this is my ex-husband, Sean, and his wife, Wendy. And he's like, now, Chuck's not somebody who doesn't say much, right? So it was one of those. But it gets better. This is where the sense of humor comes in. Guess what day their baby was born? That's right. May 24th, same day. Seriously. Come on. I'll tell you, a lot of people have laughed about that one. I mean, because it's just amazing how things like that go on. You know what I mean? But it all works out, right? All for the right reasons. So let's think about friends. Let's turn to friendship. Another important part, right? So as women, we've been talking a lot about fellowship and being together here and learning. I'm sure I've shared more. A lot of people didn't know some things about me, and I know that I have people in my life that have been mothering to me. So I'm going to tell my Becky story, okay? So when we moved here, and it was the first time I think I came to Renew because there was the Bible study that was here, that I think Dawn was doing that. I think that's what we came for. And so, I don't know anyone. I come in, hi, we all sit down. And so Becky, who's sitting back there, she sits down and she has her 2 daughters with her, right? And so she said, and we're going around, hi, I'm so-and-so and all that. So she says, I'm Becky, I'm 45, and this is Amber, and this is Mary Beth, and I'm thinking, well, I'm the same age, this is going to get good. So they get to me, and I'm like, well, I'm 45, my kid's in the nursery. And she bursts out laughing, and we were like instant friends from that point. And I thought, okay, this is all right, because, I don't know, I'm thinking people are going to think we're nuts. Who are these people? I know they think that, but maybe for other reasons, I don't know. But, it's all good. So, that at that moment, it was, okay, she gets it. This is funny, and I know someone. And let me tell you, she has been mothering from that point. Honestly, she has been a support, just like a lot of my friends have. A lot of them are here. There's something about women when you figure out that mothering, nurturing, encouraging instinct that is, you can't get that anywhere else. And I think that's the message, that we need to make sure our daughters and others know that, but we need to do that for each other too. So we had a picture up there of my friend Georgia, so I'll talk about her a little bit. So that's Nani and Popeye. So these are friends of mine that I had in Las Vegas, and this is kind of a weird story. So their daughter Amy and her husband, ex-husband, we met them when her husband and my ex-husband were going to class to be Catholic, because we were going to have our marriage blessed in the church. So everybody had to go to the Catholic class. That's what you got to do, right? So that's how we met. So we were friends with them, and they became family for us in Las Vegas. And, some of you may have met them. They came at Labor Day last year to visit us. And, it was pretty heartbreaking when we moved from them. But there's a couple things I remember about Georgia. Georgia is one of those women that She's very level-headed. She is the opposite of what I grew up with as a mom. So she's fun. She doesn't care about stuff. She doesn't care about the outside, you know, the image. She cares about your heart. You know, she was there for me through a lot. She was there through the divorce. She was there through when I found and married Chuck. She was there when Caitlin was born. So Caitlin was about 7 months, and here, okay, so I always tell the story. Oh, I was, 41 by the time I had Caitlin, and every time I'd go to the doctor, they'd say, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they'd look at me like I was some kind of science project. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm all right." Next week I go, "Yeah, I'm all right." So I got through. Now, for me, obviously, I was a lot heavier, so I had a full straight down, there wasn't any little fancy cut or anything. It was a full emergency C-section. So, and the story was, I was doing fine, and apparently ignored even that day that something was wrong. I'm like, I'm good, I'm all right, But when we were going in, she came 3 weeks early. And when we went to the doctor, that week, they always put on the monitor to check for her heart, and it was really very low. It was a very faint beat. It wasn't moving up and down very much, so there wasn't a lot of activity, which was odd. I mean, she was always, as she is now, all the time. So they said, "Well, have you eaten?" All those questions. And I said, "Well, I don't know. I'm working." I was working still. And so they said, "Well, come back in the morning and we'll check again." So I went in the morning and they checked again. And apparently I heard, "We're going to put you on a monitor." And Chuck heard, "You're going to have a C-section." So I don't know what happened there. So they walk us, down this, because we were connected to the hospital there. And so we're walking, and I'm thinking, okay, well, and I'm calling my boss, which was the weirdest thing. And I'm like, "I'll be in a couple hours. They're going to hook me to the monitor." And he's like, "Nah." He's saying behind me, "She's not going to be there." I don't know what was going on there. I have no idea. But so they hooked me to the monitor. Apparently, I did not want to have Caitlin that day. Maybe the instinct was there about the, Sean having, I don't know. But anyway, I hadn't thought about that till I just said it out loud. That's why I feel like I'm doing a comedy routine. I don't know. Anyway, so when finally when they wheeled in the IV, I remember looking at Chuck and I was like, "I'm not going home, am I?" He's like, "You're having a baby." I'm like, Anyway, so get through all that. Now, I had a pretty, sizable incision, and thank God for Chuck. He helped me a lot. I mean, it was like tied up, buckled up, soda, all kinds of stuff going on there. So when they say sickness, health, and ick, that's true. It's true. It's true. So I thought I was all right, but Caitlin was about 7 months, and I got extremely sick. So I don't know what happened. We thought it was, first they thought it was allergy, which was interesting. So they gave me Zyrtec. So I took Zyrtec, but it was like I had a sore throat or something, So I went to one of those clinics, here's your Zyrtec, fine. So I was all right for a couple days, and then it seemed to get worse, and so then it was more like a flu. I started to get a fever, and I'm very allergic to penicillin. I have some issues with some medications. So at some point they end up giving me Levaquin, and I have some type of reaction, but I also got ill. So it wasn't killing off whatever was there, and it made me sick, so I started to have some kind of allergic reaction. So I remember I was so sick, like I couldn't even stand up. I was so weak. And so our friends, that obviously that's where Caitlin would go, right? So we know no one. I mean, Caitlin's 7 months. I'm like, I can't go anywhere. Caitlin, what do I do with Caitlin? She can't go to the hospital with me. So for some reason, I think they were away and they had come back early, but I remember her coming to the house, and as soon as I could look at her, and when she saw me, she had this look. It was the look of where I knew something was wrong by looking at her. I was like, you know what I mean? And that's how close we were. So I said, I guess we need to go to the hospital, just looking at her. And from that point, got to the hospital, blood pressure dropped 60/40. I mean, kidneys shut down. Chuck heard them say something like, we're not going to admit her, she's just going to die here in the ER. I didn't hear that, because apparently I don't hear anything in the hospital. So I didn't hear it. But, and he's praying, and I'm thinking, what is going on with me? I thought I had a cold. I don't know what's happening. Anyway, with fluids and that, they were able to get my vitals up enough where they did admit me. So I ended up in intensive care for 4 days. They put me on insulin. I'm not a diabetic. It was all kinds of craziness. But I remember her being there, and I just remember how her instinct kicked in. So when I got home, they were there. My parents did come, and what I remember, I guess I started figuring this out, because when my parents came, I was so happy my dad was there. But my mom, I really felt more comfortable with my friend there, and more that I had a mother than my mom, because I thought, well, she's going to criticize what I'm wearing, or she's going to say I got sick because I'm too fat, or there's going to be something she's going to say that's going to make me crazy, So, and the other strange story that happened was just because of this reaction I had, half my throat was swollen, so I hadn't eaten food, I don't know, a couple weeks or whatever. So really was hungry, which meant I must have been feeling better. So I remember we decided to get hamburgers or something, and Chuck goes and gets all these hamburgers for all of us, and I take one bite of the hamburger, it gets lodged in my throat, and I'm choking. So this is classic. So he gets up, so he saved me in many ways. This is one of them. He did the Heimlich, the hamburger came out. Okay, seriously. But what I remember is, I'm thinking, here's my parents, they flew across the country, and I'm choking in front of them. You know what I mean? And that's what he was thinking, oh my gosh, they're here, and this is going to happen, and she was all right, And then, but I remember her getting up going, well, I'll just call 911, and he just, the instinct is fascinating. I guess it's my dynamic that I watch, but I could see the difference in who was trying to help me and who wasn't. I don't know if that makes sense, but it does to me. So anyway, so that is Nani and Popeye, and you could see Caitlin. That was, I think, when we left the last time we went to visit, and she was very upset we were leaving. So I think there's another picture there. This is my friend Carol. Now, Carol and I met in high school, or in college. And when I talked about the day I moved out, and I just took my stuff and left, she was the one there to help me. And she's been there forever. So we're actually going to visit her and her family. She has 3 boys and her husband. They live up near where I grew up. And we're meeting like halfway in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, in a week. Yeah, we're going to spend a couple days with them. But she has been like a sister to me, and she's another one. She's been there through all of it. I remember moving in with my ex-husband, and then he was deployed for a while. And I remember he left, and my friend Carol just sat there, and she's like, she didn't want to leave me in the house. It was just awful. It was not a nice place. It was not with my mom, so I was all right, And she's like, why don't you just come home with me? And I'm like, nah, I'm all right. And so she's another one that I think has always been sort of that nurturing, encouraging person that I didn't see in my mom. So I think sometimes you seek it out, I talked about things coming out in different ways from like one generation to the other. So I think a lot of the mistakes that happened in my life were different mistakes that happened in my mom's, and which is what drives me with Caitlin as well. So Carol's got Caitlin's godmother as well. And I think that it's so important with friends and friendships to be that same way, encouraging, nurturing, listening, the things that we know that we do as women. It's so important. And all that will come if you have some of this wound, please come talk to me. I mean, I think there's a lot of things. I didn't realize how deep it was and how it had affected me in my life. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm driven the way I am. It's because I'm looking for my mom to say, wow, you did a really good job. So I think that adds to the driving, of how my personality is. So I think that we need to really realize how important friendships are. They're a great gift. I think one of the lines that I saw in the book when I was reading about the mother, when it just said, friendship is so different with women. You can talk about things like bearing children, pap smears, periods. You can't have that conversation with other people, which I thought was funny. I'm like, yeah, that's true. So it's a great gift. I think it's one to be prayed for and not taken for granted. And I think a lot of times in our busy time, and I know this is me, I hope my friends don't feel that I take it for granted. I don't. I wish I had more time to be here or more time to be with them. So I think sometimes it's just recognizing that no matter where you are, you're still there. Ask God to bring that in your life if you don't have it. When God gives us a friend, He's entrusting us with the care of another's heart. It's a chance to mother, sister, be a life giver, to help someone else become the woman she was created to be. To walk alongside her and call her deep heart forth. A lot of us need that. We didn't have that. We need to pay attention to each other, and we need to really listen to that. Really hear it. I had a couple quotes that I found. I was searching one day about just mothers in general, and one of them was, when you're a mother, you're never really alone in your thoughts. A mother always has to think twice, once for herself and once for her child. And that was Sophia Loren. I thought that was awesome. It's so true, right? I mean, I know wherever I am, I'm thinking, what's she doing? What's going on with her? What's happening? The other one, which is pretty much sort of sums up what I was getting to, is the mother-daughter relationship is the most complex. Like I said when I started, some of you are sitting next to your moms. How awesome is that? I would never be in a setting like this with my mom next to me. So if you have that, that's awesome. And I know some friends who share that with me. They let me sort of share their mom, which is nice. So I want to kind of close a little bit around some of the questions that I want you guys to think about during the quiet time. So I want to say a couple things about quiet time before we look at the questions. So we've had different feedback around quiet time. So one, I'm talking about quiet time. Okay, now I got that out of the way. When I went to the conference, the first quiet time was like when you're waiting for your nails to dry, right? And you're like, and because we have so many things to do, so it's like, oh my gosh, or I'm one of those people that has difficulty just sitting and doing nothing, right? I got to be doing something, which is how I got stuck on Candy Crush. So I'll admit it, I am an addict. I'll admit it, I'm right here. Okay? So, yeah, right, I think we need one, actually. So it's just, it's something mind-numbing that I can, But anyway, I think, I can't believe I just admitted that. Seriously. I know. Wow. Anyway, so quiet time. It's hard sometimes for us to stop ourselves and say, it's time to focus. And that's why it's so critical. So some of you may have thought last night, oh my gosh, what is this, 3 hours? I mean, how long is this thing, right? Okay. And that happened to me early on. As it went on, it was easier, because I thought, okay. Now, some of you may have thought it wasn't enough. because when do we get quiet time? Never. So depending on your situation, it could be either way. But what I really strongly encourage you to do with this time is just kind of think about the things that we've talked about. Think about the wounds that maybe you're remembering or seeing or feeling. I've got some questions that we'll go through. You can journal some of the answers. That's what I think helps. I know that helped me, especially in this section. I was very drawn to this. Again, I'll admit it, my husband was right. I'm saying it again. I admitted 2 things up here today. So let's go ahead and put up the questions. So we'll go through them and then we'll break for our quiet time. So I had 10 minutes, but I think actually our quiet time today is going to be 25 minutes. Oh my gosh, 25. You think you can do it? No, somebody's like, no. You'll be all right. You'll be all right. If the thing that's always nice is if you're done with this, just relax. When do you get to do that? Just settle in and realize that you're with a safe group. You've got people around, or, just relax. So the couple of questions I have, and it would help if I put my glasses on. Put down a few words to what your relationship with your mother was like when you were young. And I'm like envisioning the clips of Despicable Me, actually, because those were a lot of the things that I remember. So what do you remember? Any special moments or painful memories that you can remember? And we can leave this up, right? So people aren't writing. Okay, good. Because that was what I kept trying to do. I'm like writing like crazy. We'll leave it up. Did your relationship with your mother change when you became an adolescent? Because that is sort of the turning point, right? Everyone's warning me about that, right? So there's a switch that apparently occurs, and they just turn into someone else, right? So what was that like? And I think the real key question, and this is the question for me that makes me just bawl. Did she know the deep waters of your heart? Think about those things. So think about those questions, and we're going to break for our quiet time. And then when quiet time is done, you'll hear we're going to have music playing during the quiet time. And then we'll have a break after that, and we'll let you know. Thank you.